car crash cases, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts. The Attorneys with Josh Wright from the law firm of Hollis Wright and host David Lamb.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for The Attorneys. We're going to be with you for the next half hour dealing with identity theft and how to protect yourself. Those folks trying to get your identity, steal it, and take your finances, they're getting more and more creative how you can arm yourself to make sure that you're safe. That's the topic of conversation tonight. Would love to have you be a part of the conversation throughout the program. At the bottom of the screen are ways that you can communicate with us. We love that. Also, a neat deal the firm of Hollis Wright makes available is attorneys are standing by live. As long as this show is on the air, they are live and ready to talk to you. So the opportunity to get some free legal advice. Leading our conversation, managing partner of the firm Hollis Wright, Josh Wright. Good to see you, sir.
You too. Hope you had a great week.
I did, and you as well.
You know, you started the show the correct way, which is that thieves are getting more and more creative. The schemes are getting more and more creative and more aggressive, and it's becoming more difficult to identify what is potential identity theft, what is normal and accepted as technology changes in society. And so, you know, we've done some shows with Micah Adkins before, and Micah is an expert in this area without question. We've done some shows on credit reporting and some other things, but we're really going to focus and zero in on identity theft in today's show. And I think it's important. It's a significant issue that faces everybody that's watching today because credit becomes important as you get older. Credit is significant and something that you want to make sure that you're able to protect for yourself, to be able to have buying power and spending power and to be able to get mortgages and homes and cars and those things. So first of all, thank you for being on the show. I know you've been on before and you do a great job in this. When we were talking before we even started the show, you talked a little bit about just how there are so few lawyers out there that really zero in and do this type of work. How did you get into this? How did you fall into this area of the law? Because it truly is a specialty.
First, Josh, thanks for having me on the show. Yes, so it is a niche area, but it's an area that affects just about all consumers, right? Because just about everyone who's at least 16 years of age has a credit report. And so for me, one of the first cases that I worked on was a data breach case against a company called TJX, who is the parent corporation of TJ Maxx. And so in working on that case, I got involved in some of the legal research, which at that point in time was cutting edge work as to coming up with legal theories for data breaches. And what I found while working on that case was one federal statute, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, which offers rights and remedies to victims of identity theft on an individual and class-wide basis.
Well, and so this is not, you're in federal court a lot, I would assume, with this type of practice?
Exclusively.
Okay. And so you've kind of expanded your locations and your breadth outside of just Alabama as an expert in this area in other states, have you not?
That's right. The Adkins firm maintains offices in Dallas, Texas, in Houston, Texas as well, and is looking to expand into other areas across the South.
Well, you know, what's interesting to me, and David hit it at the beginning of the show, trying to protect yourself has become more and more difficult because the schemes and the aggressive nature of those criminals out there has gotten more and more complicated to identify, has it not?
It has, and you know, we still see so many different low-tech means of stealing your identity as well as the high-tech means, which continue to change as technology changes.
So what are some examples of how these thieves and criminals are able to get your identity?
So on the low-tech side, there's what's called dumpster diving, where identity thieves go through your trash. That may even come by and just steal your entire trash can, and then go through your trash and look for anything that may contain personal identifying information or financial information. It may be a pay stub, it may be a bank statement or credit card statement, it may be an explanation of benefits from your insurance provider.
And how about on the high end? Because I've seen some crazy emails and things that we receive that we know was fraud, that it's still difficult to kind of determine whether or not it is.
It is. It's very difficult. And what you're describing is what's called the phishing schemes. And the phishing schemes we have seen become much more sophisticated with not only logos that look like the real thing, whether it's a bank, but also the language that's included in the email. The emails are written much better than what they were perhaps 10 years ago. Yeah. And so it may not be as easy to identify a phishing email versus a legitimate email.
Well, what do they, if they get this information, if they take out my garbage, what can they do if they find some information there?
So for example, most consumers are under the impression that to have their identity stolen, someone needs not only their name, date of birth, and social, but they may also need personal financial information, such as account numbers. Well, that's not true. An identity thief who has your name and your address, that may be sufficient to go apply for credit someplace, and they may not even have your correct date of birth or social security number and fill it out on the application, and that may be enough for the creditor to actually get a credit report and make the decision whether to extend credit to the identity thief or not.
So you guys have these chips in your credit cards? Mm-hmm. You have a chip in your credit card? Of course, we all just got this in the last year or so. I still hadn't figured out exactly what that's for, other than to ensure that the person has the credit card with them at the time they're purchasing it.
I wonder.
Is that, you think that has something to do with it?
Well, so I think what we're also seeing with the chip is moving away from, as Europe did years ago, the magnetic stripe information, which is on the back of your credit or debit card. And with the magnetic stripe, there's what's called track 1 and track 2 data, which includes card information, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And what identity thieves have been able to do once they obtain the information on that magnetic stripe is to make counterfeit cards where they can use it either at ATM machines or restaurants, gas stations, or what oftentimes happens, goes to big box stores such as Target or Walmart and buys gift cards with those. So the chip is going away from the magnetic stripe, but what we're seeing with merchants, not all merchants have a chip reader.
Yeah,
true.
And so,
and some that do don't use it.
Correct.
Right.
So in time that will hopefully change, that more retailers will use the chip readers, and the track 2 magnetic stripe will be phased out.
We headed to break. We're close. Okay, good. Because I got a question, and we'll get to it now. And that's this: what are some signs that you encourage people to look for to determine whether or not they could be subject to identity theft?
Well, I guess the better question, perhaps, is what are some signs that you may be a victim of identity theft? And one of those is you may be receiving telephone calls from a debt collector for a debt that you do not owe. It may be for a cable company or for a credit card that you never opened. You may receive letters for those same accounts. You may get your credit report and see addresses that appear on your credit report that do not belong to you. Or perhaps there are accounts on your credit report that do not belong to you. Those are just a couple of the red flags that you may be a victim of identity theft.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know we're about to go to break. I'm trying to get this timing down. Sometimes I got it, sometimes I don't. Right? When we come back, though, I want to talk just for a brief moment about when you come to a guy like Micah. But I also want to talk about, can you truly get a free credit report, yearly? And if so, how do you do that? And is that recommended? Is that a way to be vigilant to try and limit your exposure for identity theft?
All right, so free credit reports we're going to talk about. How about a free iPad Air? Would that be cool?
We can talk about that later. Yeah,
We've got that. Coming back, how you can get the free iPad Air. You can win it. We'll tell you how to do so when we come back. As we head to break, a reminder, here's how you can join our conversation. And you're going to want to find the firm of Hollis Wright on Facebook. Just search that term, Hollis Wright. You'll find it there. It could be really come in handy in the next coming weeks. We'll tell you about that when we come right back.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis Wright, a personal injury law firm. Thank you for watching The Attorneys. Now, we hope you, a friend, or a loved one never needs legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple. Provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free, so if you have questions specific to the show or related to other accident or injury-related topics, you can call, email, or text us. Or you can also follow us on Facebook or Twitter, or simply contact us by going to hollis-wright.com and click on the Contact Us link. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us watching The Attorneys.
Welcome back into The Attorneys. Sometimes identity theft and credit reports, some unpleasant surprises. How about a pleasant surprise? A neat deal the firm of Hollis Wright is doing just for you. The opportunity to win an iPad Air, the cool, hottest new thing that Apple has out. Josh, so here's how the program works, right? All you have to do, if you search the term Hollis Wright on Facebook, you need to go to the Hollis Wright Facebook page, you like it, and then share the post.
That's right. Share the post that's up that Sunday. And the concept of this really is we're trying to expand our Facebook exposure because we're trying to encourage people to recognize that we're answering questions throughout the week on Facebook for free, right. Whether it's legal-based issues, whether it's, hey, how do I find this type of lawyer? And then we're providing good legal information on Facebook. And we want that to be exposed more to the community and for folks to understand that they can use that as a resource for legal-based issues, but also for legal-based questions, no question.
So go to the Facebook page, Hollis Wright, like it, share it. Great gift for you, a grandchild. Wouldn't they love to have this?
They would love that. August 14th, we're doing it live on Facebook, giving away 2 iPad Airs. So it should be cool.
Cool.
You too could win, David.
I don't think I can win. But
all right, so let's go back to where we were from a kind of you're dealing with credit. What is getting a credit report one of the ways you recommend people can be vigilant to protect themselves against potential identity theft? And if so, how often do you recommend that?
Absolutely. So consumers have the right to a free credit report. You can obtain your free credit report from the nationwide consumer reporting agencies, such as Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. For the first time in 2004, President Bush signed into law that you have the right to get your free annual credit report from those 3 bureaus. And what that means is this, that once every 12 months, you can go to the central source and obtain your credit reports from those 3 bureaus. There's 3 different ways to do that. You can do it online, by mail, or by telephone. The Adkins firm recommends to our clients to make the request by mail. It's a simple 1-page form that the consumer fills out with their name, address, and mails it in. Within about 15 days, the consumer will receive their reports from all 3 bureaus. That's one way you can get a free report. If you are a victim of identity theft or believe that you may be a victim of fraud, you are also entitled to a free credit report from those same bureaus. You can order the report by mail or by telephone in essentially the same manner, it's just a different address. If you have submitted a police report to the credit bureaus, then the credit bureaus will also send you a free report. If you are unemployed and seeking employment, you have the right to a free credit report. If you are a recipient of government benefits, you have the right to a free credit report. If you have applied for and been turned down for credit, you have the right to a free credit report from the bureau who provided that report. So what I'm telling you is this, Josh, there are so many different ways under the federal law in which a consumer can obtain a free credit report without having to sign up for credit monitoring.
Yeah. And do you recommend credit monitoring as an option, or do you think if you're careful enough to get a free credit report when you're allowed to do that, that that's sufficient?
I do not recommend credit monitoring, generally. And for this reason, as I pointed out, consumers already have the right to a free credit report under all these different circumstances. So you don't have to start paying $19.99 a month to sign up for some service to have access to your report, because you already have that right under federal law. Secondly, what I have found is with the credit monitoring does not prevent identity theft. Okay, what credit monitoring does is tell you that your identity has been stolen. In other words, you may get an alert that a new account was opened up at Best Buy, okay? Well, the damage is done. There's already now a hard inquiry on your report, and presumably going to be an account reporting as well.
It's almost it helps mitigate the damage potentially at most.
Potentially, and so instead, what can consumers do? Well, one thing identity theft victims should do that the credit bureaus are not fast to tell you is you have the right to put a freeze on your credit file. And under some circumstances, as an identity theft victim, you can do that at no cost. In other words, for free. And what a freeze does is actually freezes your credit file so no one, including yourself, can obtain your credit report. So why is that important? Well, if identity thief walks into Best Buy to apply for a flat screen TV and give them your information and no credit report is returned, they cannot extend credit. So you don't have the inquiry on your report, and you also don't have the new account opened up on
This is why we bring guys like this on the show. That piece of information right there. I like that.
That's big time. All right, so the free credit report, one of the things you advise in terms of arming consumers with to protect their identity, what other tips or kind of helpful information can you provide for that?
So here's some of the basics to prevent identity theft. We talked about the dumpster diving. Well, get a shredder at home. If you're going to throw those important documents away that have financial or personal identifying information, shred it before you do it. Shredders are very inexpensive now. Also, if you have your Social Security card or a birth certificate, keep it in a safe place, not in your wallet, in your purse. If you happen to lose it or it gets stolen, perhaps someone breaks into your car and takes those things, then they'll have all of your personal identifying information. So keep those items in a safe place. And those are just a couple basic tips to keep in mind.
When does something get, are we about to go to break? All right, let's do this. Let's go to break, but I do want to talk about when we get back from break, when these cases go from, I'm here to monitor my credit and protect myself, to needing a lawyer like Micah, and how he gets paid and compensated where it may not cost the consumer any money to use an experienced lawyer in this area. Let's talk about those two things. I think it's important.
Yeah, we'll step aside right here. Our final break of the evening. A reminder as we head to break, if you want some free legal advice, attorneys from Hollis Wright standing by right now to speak with you. Just a few minutes, they'll be available more, so take advantage of that. Stay tuned. More of the attorneys coming right up.
I'm Carter Clay with the law firm of Hollis Wright. When you serve on a jury, you might expect to have all of the evidence presented to you during the course of a case. But there are some forms of evidence that are not allowed in court. In tonight's Legal 411, we are answering the question, why can't jurors see police incident reports? Most jurors would like to see crash reports during a trial, especially since these documents almost always show the investigating officer's opinion on who was at fault for the crash. Unfortunately, Alabama law prohibits the introduction of such reports into evidence. Alabama law states that no such accident report shall be used as evidence in any trial, civil or criminal, arising out of an accident. According to lawmakers who wrote and approved this rule, the reason accident reports cannot be admitted as evidence is that a jury might place too much weight on an official document such as a police report. There are some exceptions to this rule, of course, but most courts generally won't allow this type of evidence to be shown to a jury. Despite this rule, police officers who investigate crashes are still allowed to testify. They can tell a jury what they saw at the scene of the crash, including the road conditions and the positions of automobiles. An officer can also inform a jury of most any statement the people involved in the crash may have said to the officer during the investigation. The accident report can even be used to refresh an officer's memory of the crash. But the actual document itself cannot be introduced into evidence, and the officer's opinion of who is at fault is also excluded. That's because the jury is charged with deciding fault based on all the facts presented. Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis Wright want to help answer your questions on real issues you face. Remember, a competent lawyer will always respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you.
Welcome back into the attorneys talking about identity theft. Would love to have you be a part of the conversation. Ways you can join it there. Also, attorneys from Hollis Wright standing by live right now to take your call.
Talk about, if you will, Micah, when does an issue associated with identity theft result or turn into the need to come to someone like you? And how are you compensated so that the consumer doesn't have to come out of pocket to hire an experienced lawyer like you in the area?
Sure. So the federal statute that I operate under is the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And as an identity theft victim, you have certain rights under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And one of those rights is you have the right to dispute false information, including fraudulent information that appears on your credit report. Consumers should send their disputes to the credit reporting agencies, not the companies who are reporting the information. And what I mean by that is you should send your disputes to Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, not necessarily to the bank who's reporting the fraudulent account, because there is no private cause of action for reporting that information. Okay. Instead, the way the statute is written, the consumer has to make the dispute to the bureaus, and then the bureau has to notify the company of the dispute or delete it, one or the other. And if it chooses not to delete it, then it must reinvestigate the fraudulent information. The credit bureau must also notify the consumer the results of that investigation. If the credit reporting agency verifies the false information belongs to the identity theft victim, at that point, the identity theft victim should contact an experienced Fair Credit Reporting Act lawyer for a consultation.
So that would be the time that you want to go to a lawyer at that point?
Yes, and when consumers come to me who are victims of identity theft, they often ask, do I have to pay a retainer? What do you require? Because there is a fee shifting provision under the federal statute, that means that the defendant, if successful, would have to pay the identity theft victim's fees. So the fee shifting provision enables me to represent a client on a contingency basis.
And so ultimately that means they're going to be able to get your services, and it will be contingent upon the result where they don't have to come out of pocket to pay you.
That's right, Josh. And if there is no recovery, then they don't have to pay my attorney's fees either.
See, it's not so different than what we deal with on the personal injury side of things for our law practice. And the way I like to explain that, and we do this a lot on the show, but it bears to be repeated. We're providing the same level of legal services like Micah is, that the other side gets, that the defendant is going to get. And so we're able to do that in a way that doesn't cost people out of pocket, which is nice.
You know what I'm curious about, because they seem to be changing and updating their tactics all the time. First of all, what are you seeing now? You know, what's the hot, new, latest kind of scam out there? And are there consistent things, you know, like you hear things like never, you know, the IRS is not going to call you on the phone. You know, things like that you hear. Are there some hard and fast rules that give some telltale signs that this is probably not legit?
Sure. So we talked about the phishing emails. Phone calls are also common. Phone calls asking for personal identifying information. They may be calling to tell you you can be excused from jury duty if you provide this information,
right,
or that you may be receiving a large tax refund that you weren't expecting, so long as you provide this information. So don't give out your personal information over the telephone. The IRS, you're right, David, they won't call you. They'll always communicate with you by mail.
Do you find the same thing true with banks? Because a lot of these scams come, it almost looks like your bank is emailing you, and then when you provide your account information, your username and password to get into your account, it turns out it was fraud. And it seems to me like that is one of the most difficult things to recognize. But banks don't really email you or write you letters, or come to you directly. They're gonna write you a letter, aren't they?
You're right, Josh. And so if you get that email that says, please confirm your routing number, your account number, and your PIN number, it's more likely than not a phishing email. And if you're concerned that it may be legitimate, go to your local branch office and ask them about it.
What do you see now, or we may be
a couple of minutes left.
All right, the only thing I was going to ask you quickly is, what do you see now as kind of the bigger scams? I mean, what are you seeing in your practice that people get caught up on?
Skimmers. Skimmers can either be handheld skimmers by waiters, waitresses, and restaurants where you give a credit card to them or a debit card and it gets skimmed. And then they return the card back to you, and you don't even know that they just swiped all the track 2 data off of your credit card.
You go out of the country, a lot of times they never leave with your credit card. It always stays right in front of you.
That's
because they want people to recognize that they're not trying to skim you, so to speak.
We could talk a long time about this, but just a couple of minutes remaining. We want to give both of you an opportunity. Just a final thought for our viewers.
So as a victim of identity theft, you have rights. You have rights under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And if you are a victim, then you should contact an experienced identity theft lawyer who can help guide you through the process, not only helping you with law enforcement to file a police report, but also working with you to send disputes to the credit reporting agencies, and then who also may ultimately represent you in federal court in litigation against these companies who do not comply with the federal law.
You know, and as I will often say when I'm kind of closing out here, you know, if you go through this, don't go through it alone. I mean, the information that was provided today from Micah is great and will help kind of lead guide you and direct you through it. But even if you forget Micah's name, come to us. We'll get you to Micah. You want to make sure that you're surrounded by an experienced lawyer that can give you advice and lead guide and direct you through the process if you find yourself in these circumstances. We hope you never do. Right. But if you do, this is the type of person you want to be with. So thank you for being on the show.
Thanks,
great
Josh.
job. Good job.
Awesome information tonight. Thanks to you all for being with us, and you as well. We really appreciate it. Hopefully tonight you got some questions answered. If not, you can still continue to get in touch with the firm of Hollis Wright. Here's the information and the way you can do so. Also, reminder, just a couple of weeks remaining in the iPad Air giveaway. Going to be giving away 2 of those. Like the Hollis Wright Facebook page, and find all the information there to register and get your chance to win. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time right here on The Attorneys.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis Wright.